Chaos, renegades, traitors. Call them what you will, they are all the same. Twisted mockeries of what were once glorious space marines of the Imperium. Today we check out some Chaos Renegades as they were known at the time, wielding some heavy weapons that are rather interesting indeed. These Chaos Renegades were released around November of 1988. I say around as there were multiple batches of Renegades and some seem to show up in each batch at different release points over the year. Now these Renegades were sculpted by none other than Michael Perry, and I think you will agree they are fantastic. They were released in blister packs of 2 and came with 4 heavy weapons per blister pack, giving you some options. This blister pack would be cheap as chips, costing only £2.50. You could even buy the heavy weapons separately for £2.50 for 5. That's 50 pence each, you know. A bargain! I'm Marcel, and this is Snakeworks. Now, I've always been a fan of the classic Oldhammer Chaos Space Marine aesthetic, as regular viewers will know. These things look absolutely stunning, so let's jump in and have a look. So here's our first Chaos Renegade. I call him Plasma Man. He sounds like a He-Man villain, doesn't he? Now Plasma Man has a head with only one eye, a bit like a trouser snake. He also has a fantastic grin that looks like someone stuck a pair of false teeth to a skeleton's head, and I think that's called a skull. Now, if we run our eyes across the miniature, we can see some ribbed areas, a lot of ribbed areas. What purpose do you think this serves? Or do the Chaos Gods just like the look of ribbed things? Now, Plasma Man, funnily enough, is carrying a plasma weapon. It's a rather large one, and I think nowadays we would call it a heavy plasma, but it's possibly called a plasma cannon here. Does anyone know what the difference between the two are? The next Chaos Renegade I call Beam Man. Don't you just love my original nicknames? I only give them these names in my notes to keep track of things. Beam Man is wearing a lovely suit of Mark 6 armour, which isn't actually that corrupted for the time, which is different. Well, his helmet isn't anyway. He does, however, have a pipe going into or out of his eye, which looks unfortunate. What do you think that's for? Maybe he's a Nurgle Marine, and the eye pipe is connected to his bumhole, and that's why he has a shitty outlook on things. Ba-dum-tsh. His knee pads, however, are not normal Mark 6. They're all squared off, and look a bit like greenhouse window panels. Now I need to paint one as a glass marine. Has that ever been done before? The reason he's called Beam Marine is because he's carrying a conversion beamer. Possibly my favourite weapon in all of Warhammer 40,000. That and the Harlequin's Kiss. Very interesting. You used to see a lot more of them in the Rogue Trader era. These days they're both a lot rarer, I guess to match up with the technology being rare in the universe. Now some people might argue that weapon is a plasma gun, as back in the day they both looked rather similar with like a long shaft and a mushroomy bulbous tip. Sometimes it looked like a big old metal penis. Our next renegade is Melter Man. This one's a bit different to the rest. To start with, he seems a lot shorter than the others. Perhaps he was a Chaos Squat that was fused with a Marine. His head is a bit of a mess. Due to his warped corruption, it looks to me like a tree stump. A traitor tree man, perhaps. Do we get tree men in 40k anywhere? James Workshop, I want tree men in Warhammer 40,000. Maybe that's what an amble is supposed to be. Now his right hand, the hand holding the end of the weapon, looks really weird indeed. The fingers are really straight and rectangular, looks like a dinner fork. But I think dinner forks have more than 3 tines though. Very strange indeed. Here we have Mushroom, a fitting name for a warped Chaos Renegade, I think. Mushrooms were a thing in the Super Mario Bros. Series, the Mushroom Kingdom. So maybe the Mushroom Kingdom is perhaps a Tzeentch planet in the Eye of Terror. Could Toad be a demon? I think it's a good theory. Anyway, this Renegade has a body like a mushroom, and I love it. I don't think he has any skin on his face. He looks very skeletal, but I guess that's pretty normal for a denizen of chaos. Denizen. What does that word even mean? Now this denizen is toting a heavy bolter. They used to look a lot different back in the olden days, eh? It's great. Now some of the designs of some of the weapons have changed a little bit over the years. Now I don't know if it's nostalgia creeping into my brain, but I always seem to prefer the look of the older versions, apart from the conversion beamer. I mean, I like the weird, strange look. What do you guys think? Mr. Hands is up next. Wasn't he a character in South Park? Now this Renegade is very lucky, or unlucky, depending on how you look at it. He has 3 arms. I'm not sure what use 3 arms would be, but it sounds handy. Get it? Handy. The helmet of this Renegade has the look of a fantasy chaos warrior or knight. Was it the Space Marine Mark III armour that looked like this? It might have been Mark II. In his extra hand, he has a pistol, and the pistol has what looks like the surprised Pikachu face on it.
Pikachu!
Tellytubbies! Who remembers those? This Renegade could be a Tellytubby. He's got an aerial on top of his head. Sadly, there's no TV screen on his belly though. A poor effort. His helmet is giving me Gimp mask vibes. I don't think I've ever had to write that down in my entire life. Maybe Gimp, but never with mask, and I'm glad that's changed. Now I said there was no TV screen in his belly, but it does appear there might be one in his hand. Tubby custard indeed. Maybe he just had it moved.
Again.
Now Tellytubbies were absolutely massive in the 1990s. I think it was the 90s. Now the first time I ever saw Tellytubbies when I was a youngster was the day I went to have a blood test. And that was the time I sat in the chair afterwards, fainted and wet myself. Very embarrassing. I'm really not very good with needles. Now our next heavy weapon toting renegade is Plasma Boy. On his head he has a helmet, which has what looks like horns holding a ball. What sort of ball is that, do you think? Maybe it's an egg. He also has a weird chin strap, which after a second look appears to me like those underwater breathing things the Jedi used in The Phantom Menace, which at the time to me looked like a pair of spark plugs stuck together. Did anyone else notice that? Now I don't know if it's normal for a plasma gun, but this one starts out quite thin and ends up getting thicker along the shaft towards a big bulbous tip. Is that normal? This next renegade doesn't look very happy at all, does he? The expression on his face gives him the look of a haggard old worker from the 1800s or something. Like something out of Oliver Twist. I think the term is Dickensian. He has a skinny arm and a massive forearm. The only other person I know that looks like this is Popeye, or the plasma gun from the previous Marine. There also appears to be a certain something attached to the side of his leg. I can't tell what it is, but I'm going to assume it's some sort of weapon, most probably a sword. If it is a chaos sword, it might have a face on it. I do like faces on chaos weapons, you know. Now when did the fashion of putting faces on weapons and things begin? Was it pre-Warhammer 40,000? I think there's a fair amount of it in the Rogue Trader era stuff, but it might have been in fantasy years before. Whatever the case may be, it's certainly all over the place now. Here we have who I call Pipeface. I can't quite tell if those pipes on his face go into his mouth or up his nostrils. Whatever way you call it, I wouldn't want either myself. Also, is something going in or coming out? Yuck. His legs have a lot of ribs to them. It has the look of a coiled up slinky. Maybe that's how he gets down the stairs. Now, I never had a slinky, but my cousin did, and also apparently Egon Spengler had part of one, but he straightened it. 10 polo holes, if you get that reference. Now, Pipeface is carrying a multi-melter. Well, at least that's what I believe it to be. It's bloody massive. The barrels look like the exhausts of a 3rd edition plastic Space Marine bike, and I always painted them the same anyway. I guess they're sort of the same thing, both tubes where hot stuff comes out. Maybe I should come out of one too, hey? I've called this next Renegade Plaster, and I don't know why. Maybe it was a typo. I wrote these notes a while ago, you see. Now, the head of Plaster reminds me of a Micron's head. Necron. Oh my word, this autocorrect is a pain in the arch. The armour the Necron is wearing has been squared off. Gone are the rounded edges of marine armour, and in its place things that looks like bit of the robot from Demon Seed. Can you remember that movie? It was great. His hand appears to be attached to the weapon, but I don't think that can be possible, as I'm sure these weapons are supposed to be separate and interchangeable, so I'm guessing maybe the hand is sculpted to make it look that way when it's equipped. That's my guess anyway. So it seems back in the day, all the heavy weapons were interchangeable with whatever marine miniature you fancied. Nowadays, I don't think that's the case so much. Alright then, so which one of those Renegades was your favourite? Mine was Giga, or Giga. Never did know how to pronounce his name. Now, talking of Giga, well, I nearly fell out of my chair. I have this. It's a beanie hat, or bobble hat, or Benny hat, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, I heard a rumour that Giga, when he was sculpting, always wore one of these hats. And the interesting thing is, apart from the £1.50 sticker on the top there, it says on the inside, if you're enjoying this video, then please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. That means you, Han. Here we have H.R. Giger, yet another Marine influenced by Tiger's work. And again, you can't blame them, as it's an iconic design. Now, I do love spotting all the Tiger alien references. Tigers? Okay, I'm getting fed up with this autocorrect now. I'm going to turn it off. I meant Giga or Geiger, however you pronounce it. The Renegade has a weird tilt to his head, almost like he's eyeing you up to be killed in the meanest way possible. It's creepy and perfect for a Chaos Marine. He's holding a missile launcher, and this missile launcher has a lot of ribs all the way along the shaft of the weapon, and it's a long shaft indeed. It's strange. Again, perfect for chaos. Anyway, shall we have a look at the Oldhammer weapons specifically now? Let's go. First up, it's a classic, the Heavy Bolter. Now, I think I've said it before, but I prefer the look of this one to the current one. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree? Next up, it's a melter, or multi-melter. This one looks a lot like they do nowadays, and it hasn't changed much over the years, has it? Here we have the Rogue Trader era las cannon. I think it's a lot more slender than it is now, especially in the body of the weapon. Again, I think I prefer this older look. The Rogue Trader era missile launcher is up next. Look how long this one is. It's even weirder than the Imperial version. I always wondered why they have that cheese wedge end. A weapon you don't see much on heavy weapon operators anymore. It's a grenade launcher. Now, I don't know how these worked in the rules, but I'm guessing the missile launcher kind of made them redundant. Here's quite possibly my favourite weapon in all of Warhammer 40,000, the Conversion Beamer. It's so cool. These early ones look a bit like heavy plasmas, which can be a bit confusing. The newer ones with the radar dishy bit do look a lot better, in my humble opinion. A very famous weapon now, noted for its extensive use by the other traitor legion, the Dark Angels. Scum! It's facing the wrong way, possibly a clue as to the secret, traitorous intentions of its Calibanite wielders. Wonderful stuff. If you want to see some more Oldhammer videos, then check out the playlist up here somewhere. As always, thank you very much for watching, and always remember to drill your barrels.